My mom, Irene Sachs, or Irene Trackman as she was born in Cape Town, and her parents, Lily and Harry Trackman, were both born in Lithuania and were married in Cape Town, and they came to South Africa in the early 1900s. My father, Solly Sachs, arrived in this country in 1927. He was preceded here by his father 5 years earlier, who started working as a traveling salesman in a country area of Durbanville. After 5 years, he'd accumulated sufficient to send for my dad, who was the eldest of 3 children, and his mother, and they arrived in South Africa in 1927. My dad was approximately about 10, 11 years old when he came, and they settled in Durbanville. Durbanville at the moment is very close to Cape Town, but in those days it was a trek. It was considered the country, and my dad went to school and grew up in Durbanville. He had his bar mitzvah in Durbanville, and at the age of 16, which was in about 1931, 32, things were tough in the country, things were tough at home, and it was decided that he needed to start working, and he was recommended to join a family who had butcheries or connections in butcheries, and my dad started working at the age of 16 in a butchery in Woodstock or Salt River. He worked there for many years, and he actually boarded with the owners of the business, who were distant cousins as well. My mother, Irene, was the eldest of 6 children, and at the age of 18, she had lost her father. His name was Harry Trackman. In fact, I'm named after him. She went to Cape Town High School, and she finished school and did a couple of courses in bookkeeping and what have you, and eventually she got a job as a bookkeeper in a butchery somewhere in Claremont. My parents met in round about 1935 or so, 35, 36, and they eventually got married on Lag BaOmer of 1938 in the Garden Shul and the Zionist Hall in Cape Town. Soon after they got married, my parents moved to Muizenberg, and my father started a small butchery shop in Palmer Road, Muizenberg, called Model Butchery. At that time, there was a lot of competition in Muizenberg. There were about 5 or 6 other butcheries, because Muizenberg was a bustling place, and he got started, and there was work in a butchery in those days was a very big manual experience. It wasn't as relatively easy as it is today. There were no machinery, and things were done by hand, saws and minces and all sorts of things. And my dad battled. He battled for a number of years, and unfortunately, or fortunately, the war came in at about. The war started in about 1939, 1940. Incidentally, I was born on the 28th of December, 1940. And things were tough for my parents. And they were like a small fish in a very big pond, because Muizenberg was a very big pond in those days, commercially, namely 5 butcheries and lots of small little businesses. Anyhow, because of price control in meat. It actually saved my father, because for a number of years he was working at he couldn't make it because of the competition. But once price control came in, he was guaranteed a certain amount of profit, and they carried on and battled and survived. And my brother came along in about 1943. My brother was born, and that's Basil Sachs. And the two of us were growing up in Muizenberg, and in about 1946, 47, my dad sold this particular shop. It was called Model Butchery in Palmer Road, Muizenberg. He sold it for in those days, which was a considerable sum, because the business had a certain amount of value, because it had what did it have? It had a quota system. Meat was on a quota system, and he had because he'd been around for about 5 or 6 years, he'd accumulated a quota which became valuable in somebody else's eyes. And my parents got out of the butchery business and devoted approximately 1 year to myself and my brother. And I remember very well having a fantastic holidays in Muizenberg, the way many holiday makers from all over South Africa used to come to Muizenberg. I have pictures of great times on Muizenberg Beach at the age of about 6 or 7 years old. At about that time, after having a holiday, my parents realized that they were starting to eat into capital, and they needed to do something else. And they took a little shop near the railway line in York Road, and they opened a small little deli shop called Sachs Delicacies. That was a sort of a deli type operation which sold cold meats, hamburgers and hot dogs, and they were open until late hours of the morning. And many people will remember coming to Muizenberg, to the beach, to spend evenings in Muizenberg and going to Sachs Delicacies, as it was known in those days. Things did pretty well, and a year or two later there was a vacant shop very close by, which was slightly bigger. They took another shop, and things went pretty well. They were starting off, and things went pretty well. At that time, cold meats, and kosher cold meats in particular, were in big demand, but because the war had ended, it was still very scarce. And my dad got an opportunity to open a kosher bologna factory in Belleville, in part of a kosher section in a pig factory, and it was all approved by the Beth Din and Rabbi Abrams in those days, and we were the sole suppliers of the cold meats in this area, in Muizenberg in particular, and we became extremely well known for the range of cold meats, kosher cold meats in those days, the range and also the availability of the cold meats, and things went pretty well for us.